Hi, I'm Victoria Sterling, and I'm about to tell you the most satisfying story of revenge you'll ever hear. 3 years ago, I was living what I thought was the perfect life. I had everything: a successful career as a marketing director, a beautiful home in the suburbs, and what I believed was a loving marriage to my husband of 8 years, David. David was a rising star in the tech industry, working as a senior developer at one of the city's most prestigious companies. He was charming, intelligent, and had this way of making everyone around him feel special. That's probably why I fell for him in the first place, and unfortunately, it's also why another woman did too. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday evening in March. David had been working late more frequently, claiming his team was under pressure to meet a major deadline. I understood. My own career demanded long hours sometimes. But that night, when he came home at nearly midnight, something felt different. He avoided eye contact, went straight to the shower, and when I tried to kiss him good night, he turned his head so my lips met his cheek instead. It was subtle, but after 8 years of marriage, you notice these things. Over the next few weeks, the signs became more obvious. David was constantly on his phone, typing messages with a secretive smile I hadn't seen in years. He started going to the gym more often, bought new clothes, and even changed his cologne. When I complimented his efforts to get in shape, he just shrugged and said he wanted to feel better about himself. The breaking point came on a Friday night when David claimed he had to work through the weekend on a critical project. I decided to surprise him at the office with his favorite Thai takeout. I had his building's security card from when I'd visited before, so getting up to his floor wasn't a problem. The office was dark except for a few scattered desk lamps. I made my way to David's cubicle, expecting to find him hunched over his computer, stressed and grateful for the food. Instead, I found his workstation empty, computer in sleep mode, and a small framed photo I'd never seen before tucked behind his monitor. It was a picture of David with a woman I didn't recognize. She was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with blonde hair and a bright smile. They were at some kind of company event, and the way they were looking at each other made my stomach drop. This wasn't a casual work photo. This was the look of two people who were intimately involved. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at that photograph. My hands were shaking as I took out my phone and captured an image of it. Then I carefully placed it back exactly where I found it and left the building. The drive home was a blur. Part of me wanted to confront David immediately, to demand answers and explanations. But another part of me, the strategic, calculating part that had made me successful in my career, told me to wait. To gather more information. To be smart about this. That night, I lay in bed pretending to sleep while David slipped in beside me, smelling like perfume that definitely wasn't mine. He thought I was asleep, but I was wide awake, my mind racing with plans. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. I know it sounds dramatic, but I needed to know the truth. I needed proof. Sarah Mitchell came highly recommended, and when I met her at a coffee shop downtown, I knew I'd made the right choice. Sarah was professional, discreet, and understood exactly what I needed. Within a week, she had gathered enough evidence to confirm my worst fears. David wasn't just having an affair, he was in love with someone else. The woman in the photo was Amanda Chen, a junior marketing coordinator at his company. They'd been seeing each other for almost 6 months. The photos Sarah showed me were devastating. David and Amanda at restaurants I'd never been to, holding hands in parks, kissing in the parking garage of their office building. But the worst part was seeing how happy he looked, happier than I'd seen him in years. I spent the next few days in a strange state of calm. I went to work, came home, made dinner, and acted like everything was normal. David seemed relieved that I wasn't asking questions about his schedule anymore. He probably thought he was getting away with it. But I was planning. You see, David had no idea what I was capable of. He saw me as his supportive wife, the woman who had put her own ambitions on hold to help him advance his career. He forgot that I was the one who had helped him prepare for job interviews, who had edited his resume, who had coached him through salary negotiations. He forgot that I knew his industry inside and out. More importantly, he forgot that I had connections he didn't even know about. Remember when I said I worked in marketing? Well, I didn't just work in marketing. I was the marketing director for the second largest tech company in the city. David's company's biggest competitor. And I had been in that position for 3 years, building relationships, gathering intelligence, and positioning our company to dominate the market. The plan I developed was beautiful in its simplicity. I wasn't just going to expose David's affair, I was going to destroy the foundation of his entire life, piece by piece, in a way that would look completely natural to everyone else. First, I needed to understand David's position at his company better. I started asking casual questions about his work, pretending to be the interested, supportive wife. He was so pleased by my renewed attention that he told me everything about the big project he was working on, the clients he was trying to land, the promotion he was hoping for. That's when I learned about the Morrison account. David's team had been working for months to secure a contract with Morrison Industries, a major manufacturing company looking to upgrade their entire IT infrastructure. It was a multi-million-dollar deal that would make David's career and potentially earn him a promotion to team lead. I also learned that Amanda Chen was part of the marketing team supporting David's project. She was the one creating the presentation materials, handling client communications, and coordinating meetings. In other words, she was integral to the success of the Morrison deal. This information was pure gold. You see, 3 months earlier, my company had also pitched for the Morrison account. We hadn't won it, but during the process, I had developed a good relationship with their decision makers. I knew exactly what they were looking for, what their concerns were, and what would make them reconsider their choice. I reached out to my contact at Morrison Industries, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, who was their Chief Technology Officer. I suggested we meet for coffee to discuss potential future opportunities. Jennifer was happy to hear from me. She'd been impressed with our initial proposal and respected my expertise. During our meeting, I casually mentioned that I had chosen David's company for the upgrade. Jennifer confirmed this, but also revealed something interesting. They weren't completely satisfied with the progress so far. There had been some communication issues, and they were starting to question whether they'd made the right choice. That's all I needed to hear. Over the next few weeks, I began what I called Operation Credibility. It was subtle, psychological warfare designed to make David's company look unprofessional and unreliable. I started by creating fake social media profiles and leaving negative reviews about David's company on various business platforms. Nothing too obvious, just comments about poor communication, missed deadlines, and unprofessional behavior. I made sure to mention specific details that would resonate with Morrison's concerns. Then I began phase 2. Using my network of contacts in the industry, I started spreading rumors about David's company. Not malicious lies, but strategic seeds of doubt. I'd mention in casual conversations how I'd heard they were having internal problems, how their best people were leaving, how they were struggling to meet client demands. The beautiful thing about rumors in the tech industry is that they spread quickly and often become accepted as fact. Within a few weeks, people throughout the city were questioning David's company's stability. But I wasn't done yet. Remember Amanda Chen? The woman who was sleeping with my husband? I discovered through my investigation that she had a secret that could destroy her career. She had lied on her resume about having a degree from a prestigious university. It was a small lie, but in the competitive world of corporate marketing, it was the kind of thing that could get someone fired immediately. I had Sarah verify this information thoroughly. Amanda had attended a community college for 2 years but never graduated. She had been working in administrative roles for several years before somehow landing her current position. The fake degree was the only thing that made her qualified for the job. Armed with this information, I made an anonymous call to the HR department at David's company. I simply mentioned that they might want to verify Amanda Chen's educational credentials, as there were rumors in the industry about resume fraud. The results were swift and devastating. Within a week, Amanda was called into HR for a meeting. By the end of that day, she had been terminated for falsifying her qualifications. David was devastated. He came home that night looking like he'd been hit by a truck. I played the concerned wife perfectly, asking what was wrong and offering comfort. He told me about Amanda's firing, how it was a shock to everyone, how they'd have to find someone else to handle the Morrison presentation. I held him while he talked, stroking his hair and making sympathetic noises. Inside, I was celebrating. With Amanda gone, David's team was scrambling to meet their deadline for the Morrison presentation. They were understaffed, disorganized, and operating under intense pressure. David was working 18-hour days, trying to compensate for the loss of Amanda's contributions. That's when I implemented Phase 3. I reached out to Jennifer Walsh again, this time expressing concern about the rumors I'd been hearing about David's company. I suggested that Morrison might want to reconsider their choice, especially given the recent upheaval with personnel changes. Jennifer was already nervous about the delays in their project timeline. My call was perfectly timed. She told me that Morrison's board was indeed reconsidering their decision, and they were thinking about opening up the bidding process again. I offered to have my company submit a new proposal, one that would address all of Morrison's concerns and get their project back on track. Jennifer was very interested. Within 2 weeks, my company had won the Morrison account. The contract was worth $4.2 million, and the commission on landing such a major client earned me a promotion to Senior Marketing Director. David's company lost their biggest potential client, and worse, word spread quickly through the industry about their failure to deliver. Other clients began questioning their capabilities. David's promotion was off the table, and there were whispers about potential layoffs. But I wasn't finished with my husband yet. Remember all those late nights David claimed he was working? All those weekends he said he was at the office? I had documented everything. Sarah's investigation had provided me with timestamps, photos, and a detailed timeline of David's activities. I also had access to David's laptop and phone through our shared iCloud account. He had no idea I could see his messages, emails, and photos. I had months of evidence of his affair, including explicit messages and intimate photos he'd exchanged with Amanda. The final phase of my plan was the most personal, and honestly, the most satisfying. I waited until David's company had officially lost the Morrison account and Amanda had been gone for 3 weeks. David was depressed, stressed, and vulnerable. He was coming home earlier now, trying to reconnect with me, probably feeling guilty about the affair and wanting to repair our marriage. I let him believe he was succeeding. I was warmer, more affectionate, more interested in his problems at work. I cooked his favorite meals, suggested we watch movies together, and even initiated intimacy for the first time in months. David was so grateful for my support that he started opening up about how difficult things had been lately. He talked about feeling lost, about questioning his career choices, about wondering if he was really cut out for the corporate world. That's when I struck. On a quiet Sunday morning, as we were having coffee on our back patio, I placed a manila folder on the table between us. David looked at it curiously, then up at me with a questioning expression. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it," I said calmly. David opened the folder and went completely white. Inside were printed copies of his text messages with Amanda, photos of them together, bank statements showing charges at hotels and restaurants, and a detailed timeline of their affair. He looked up at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Victoria, I can." "Can what?" I interrupted. "Explain. Deny it. Lie to me some more." How did you? How did I find out? I've known for months, David. I've been watching you, documenting everything, and waiting for the right moment. He was shaking now, the papers scattered across the table. Victoria, please, let me explain. It didn't mean anything. I was confused. I made a mistake. A mistake? I laughed. There was no humor in it. A 6-month affair isn't a mistake, David. It's a choice. Multiple choices. Hundreds of choices to lie to me, to betray me, to humiliate me. I love you, he said desperately. I've always loved you. This thing with Amanda, it's over. She's gone, and I want to make things right. Oh, it's over already, I said. But not because she's gone. It's over because I made sure she was gone. David stared at me, not understanding. What do you mean? I mean I had a friend, David. I discovered she lied about her degree, and I made sure her employers found out. I destroyed her career just like she tried to destroy my marriage. The color drained from his face even more. You did what? I also made sure your company lost the Morrison account. I used my connections to spread doubts about your company's reliability, and then I swooped in and stole the contract. That $4.2 million deal? The one that would have made your career? It's mine now. David was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You're insane. No, I'm thorough. See, David, you made a fundamental error. You underestimated me. You thought I was just your supportive little wife who would never find out about your affair. You forgot that I'm actually much better at this game than you are. I stood up and walked to the edge of the patio, looking out at our garden. You know what's funny? You could have just asked for a divorce. We could have separated amicably, split our assets, and moved on with our lives. But you chose to lie and cheat instead. What do you want? David asked quietly. I turned back to him. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to know that the woman you thought you could manipulate and deceive is actually capable of destroying everything you've worked for. Are you going to divorce me? Oh, David, I said, sitting back down. We're just getting started. Over the next few weeks, I watched David struggle with the reality of what I'd done. He tried to process how his wife had systematically dismantled his professional life while he was focused on his affair. He was hurt, angry, and confused, but he was also terrified. You see, David had finally realized that I wasn't just his wife. I was his equal, and in many ways, his superior. I had the skills, connections, and intelligence to destroy him completely if I chose to. The question was, what was I going to do next? I let him wonder for a while. I went to work each day, enjoyed my promotion, and basked in the success of landing the Morrison account. At home, I was civil but distant. I didn't mention the affair or my revenge. I simply went about my daily routine as if nothing had happened. This psychological limbo was almost worse for David than outright confrontation would have been. He didn't know what to expect from me, and the uncertainty was eating him alive. Finally, after 3 weeks of this tension, David couldn't take it anymore. What happens now? He asked one evening as we were eating dinner. What do you mean? Victoria, please. I know you're planning something else. I know you're not done with me yet. Just tell me what you want. I set down my fork and looked at him calmly. I want you to grovel. What? I want you to beg for my forgiveness. I want you to acknowledge what you've done, take full responsibility, and convince me that you deserve another chance. David's face flushed with anger. You destroyed my career, Victoria. You cost me my promotion, my reputation, my future. And now you want me to grovel? Yes, I said simply. Because that's what you should have done months ago, before you decided to sleep with someone else. This is crazy. You're acting like a psychopath. I smiled. No, David, I'm acting like a woman who refuses to be disrespected. You can either accept that and work to repair our relationship, or you can continue to be defiant and see what else I'm capable of. The threat hung in the air between us. David knew I wasn't bluffing. He'd seen what I could do when I put my mind to it. What do you want me to say? He asked finally. I want you to tell me the truth. All of it. I want to know how the affair started, why you chose her over me, and what you were thinking every time you lied to my face. And so David talked. 4 hours. He told me everything. How he'd met Amanda at a company happy hour, how they'd started flirting, how one thing led to another. He told me about the excitement of sneaking around, the thrill of having someone new who thought he was wonderful. He told me about the guilt, too. How he'd felt terrible every time he came home to me, how he'd tried to end things with Amanda several times but couldn't bring himself to do it. He told me about the fantasies he'd had about leaving me for her, about starting a new life with someone who didn't know all his flaws and failures. It was painful to hear, but also illuminating. I realized that David's affair wasn't really about me at all. It was about his own insecurities, his fear of getting older, his need to feel desired and important. Do you love her? I asked when he finished. David was quiet for a long moment. I thought I did. But I think what I loved was how she made me feel about myself. And how do I make you feel about yourself? Like I'm not enough, he said quietly. Like I'm not as smart or successful or impressive as you are. This was the real truth, and it hit me harder than I expected. David hadn't cheated because he stopped loving me. He'd cheated because he felt inadequate compared to me, and Amanda had made him feel like he was worthy of admiration. So what do you want to do now? I asked. I want to try again, he said. I want to go to counseling, work on our marriage, and prove to you that I can be the husband you deserve. And if I'm not interested in trying again? David looked at me with a mixture of fear and resignation. Then I guess I'll have to accept that I destroyed the best thing in my life. I didn't answer him that night. Instead, I told him I needed time to think. The truth was, I had already made my decision. But I wasn't ready to reveal it yet. Over the next month, I put David through what I called the rehabilitation process. I made him attend individual therapy to work on his issues with self-esteem and commitment. I made him write me letters of apology, not just one, but several, each addressing different aspects of his betrayal. I also made him take concrete steps to rebuild trust. He gave me complete access to his phone, email, and social media accounts. He agreed to come straight home from work every day and check in with me regularly when I was away. He even agreed to find a new job, since his current workplace held too many painful associations. Some people might think I was being too controlling, but I saw it as giving David the structure he needed to prove his commitment. If he really wanted to save our marriage, he would do whatever it took. And surprisingly, David rose to the challenge. He threw himself into therapy, wrote heartfelt letters that showed real insight into his behavior, and began actively job hunting. He was attentive, affectionate, and seemed genuinely committed to making things right. For a while, I almost believed we could make it work. But then I discovered something that changed everything. Remember Amanda Chen, the woman whose career I had destroyed? I had assumed she disappeared from our lives completely after being fired. But I was wrong. While reviewing David's old emails, which I had access to through our shared accounts, I found a message thread from just a few days after Amanda was fired. David had reached out to her, expressing his sympathy and offering to help her find a new job. The messages were initially innocent. David was being supportive, offering to serve as a reference, suggesting companies she might apply to. But as I read further, I realized that their communication had continued even after she was fired. In fact, they had been in contact throughout the entire period when David was supposedly working to rebuild our marriage. The messages weren't explicitly romantic, but they were intimate in a way that made my stomach turn. David was telling Amanda about his problems at home, about how I had found out about their relationship, about how he was struggling with guilt and confusion. Amanda, for her part, was being understanding and supportive. She told David that she didn't blame him for what happened, that she understood why he had to try to make his marriage work, and that she would always care about him. But the most damning message was from just 2 weeks ago. David had written to Amanda about how the counseling was going, how he was trying to be the husband I wanted, but how he couldn't stop thinking about her. He told her that he missed her, that he regretted how things had ended between them, and that he sometimes wondered if he was making a mistake by trying to save his marriage. Amanda had responded that she missed him too, that she was struggling to move on, and that she hoped someday they could be together again. Reading those messages, I felt something inside me break. Not my heart, that had been broken months ago. What broke was my last vestige of hope that David was capable of real change. He had been lying to me again. While going through the motions of reconciliation, while attending therapy and writing apology letters, he had been secretly maintaining contact with the woman he'd had an affair with. He was keeping her as a backup plan, a safety net in case our marriage didn't work out. I printed out the entire email thread and put it in another manila folder. Then I waited for the right moment to confront him. That moment came 3 days later, when David came home from work excited about a job interview he'd had. He was animated, optimistic, talking about how this new position would be a fresh start for both of us. "I think things are really turning around," he said, kissing me on the cheek. "I feel like we're getting back to who we used to be." "Do you?" I asked, placing the folder on the kitchen counter. David's face fell when he saw it. "What's that?" "Your secret emails with Amanda." The color drained from his face. "Victoria, I can explain." "No," I said firmly. "You can't explain. There's no explanation for this. You've been lying to me again, David. While pretending to work on our marriage, you've been maintaining contact with your affair partner." "It wasn't like that," he protested. I felt bad about what happened to her. I wanted to make sure she was okay. "You told her you missed her." I was confused. "I didn't mean." "You told her you regretted how things ended between you." "That's not what I meant. I regretted that she got hurt, that she lost her job." "You kept her as a backup plan, David. You've been hedging your bets, keeping one foot in our marriage and one foot out the door." David slumped against the counter. "You're right. I'm sorry. I know it was wrong, but I was scared. I was scared that things wouldn't work out between us, and I didn't want to lose everything." "Well, congratulations," I said. "You've just lost everything." That night, I called my lawyer and filed for divorce. But I wasn't done with David yet. Oh no, I had one more surprise for him. Remember when I mentioned that David had agreed to find a new job? Well, he had been interviewing with several companies, and he'd gotten excited about one particular opportunity. It was a senior developer position at a growing startup, with excellent benefits and the potential for rapid advancement. What David didn't know was that the startup was funded by a venture capital firm that had close ties to my company. The managing partner of the VC firm was someone I'd worked with on several projects, and we had a good professional relationship. I reached out to him and casually mentioned that I'd heard they were funding a new tech startup. I told him I was impressed with their investment strategy and wondered if there might be opportunities for collaboration between our companies. During our conversation, I mentioned that I'd heard they were hiring senior developers. I told him that my soon-to-be ex-husband was in the market for a new job, and while I couldn't recommend him professionally, due to our personal situation, I wanted to make sure he didn't accidentally end up working for one of their portfolio companies. I explained that David had been involved in some ethical issues at his previous job, and while nothing illegal had occurred, it might be best for everyone if he weren't associated with their investment. The managing partner appreciated my discretion and assured me that David's name would be flagged in their system. 3 days later, David got a call from the startup. They were rescinding their job offer due to concerns that had come to light during their background check process. David was devastated. That job had been his lifeline, his chance to rebuild his career and prove that he could bounce back from his mistakes. Without it, he was facing a much more difficult job search in an industry where word travels fast. But I still wasn't done. You see, during the months I'd been planning my revenge, I discovered that David had been using our joint credit cards to pay for his affair. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts for Amanda. It all added up to thousands of dollars of marital assets spent on his infidelity. I had documented every expense, and my lawyer assured me that I had a strong case for recovering those funds in the divorce settlement. But I decided to take a different approach. Instead of just asking for the money back, I decided to make David's financial irresponsibility public. I created a detailed spreadsheet showing every expense David had charged to our joint accounts during his affair. Hotel bills, restaurant charges, purchases at jewelry stores, charges at laundry shops, everything was there, with dates, amounts, and explanations. Then I sent copies of this spreadsheet to David's family, his close friends, and several of his former colleagues. I included a cover letter explaining that I was sharing this information as part of my efforts to recover marital assets that had been inappropriately spent. The reaction was swift and devastating. David's parents were horrified to learn not just about their affair, but about how much money he had spent on it. His friends were shocked by the extent of his deception. His former colleagues were disgusted by his unprofessional behavior. Within a week, David had become a power in his social and professional circles. People who had once respected him now saw him as a liar and a cheat. His reputation was in ruins. But perhaps the most satisfying part of my revenge was what happened to Amanda. Remember, I had destroyed her career by exposing her fraudulent resume. But I hadn't forgotten about her, and I certainly hadn't forgiven her role in destroying my marriage. Through my private investigator, I learned that Amanda had been struggling to find work since being fired. The tech industry is small, and word of her termination had spread. Most companies were reluctant to hire someone who had been fired for resume fraud. Amanda had been forced to move back in with her parents and was working part-time at a retail store while trying to rebuild her career. She was depressed, financially struggling, and facing the possibility of having to leave the tech industry entirely. I decided to make her situation worse. Using my network of contacts, I began quietly spreading the word about Amanda's situation. I didn't have to lie or exaggerate. I simply shared the facts about her fraudulent resume and her termination. I also mentioned, in passing, that she had been involved in an affair with a married man at her previous job. The combination of professional dishonesty and personal moral failings made Amanda essentially unhireable in the tech industry. Companies didn't want to risk their reputation by associating with someone who had shown such poor judgment. Amanda was forced to abandon her career aspirations and take a job in an entirely different field. She became a server at a restaurant, making a fraction of what she had earned in tech and facing an uncertain future. Some people might say I went too far, that I was unnecessarily cruel to someone who was already suffering. But I didn't see it that way. Amanda had made a choice to pursue a married man, knowing full well that she was contributing to the destruction of a marriage. She had to face the consequences of that choice. As for David, the divorce proceedings were brutal. My lawyer was excellent, and we had overwhelming evidence of David's infidelity and financial irresponsibility. We were able to secure a favorable settlement that gave me the majority of our assets, including our house. David was forced to move into a small apartment and begin the long process of rebuilding his life from scratch. He had no job, no savings, and a reputation that made it difficult to find employment in his chosen field. The last time I saw David was at the final divorce hearing. He looked terrible, thin, tired, and defeated. When our eyes met across the courtroom, I saw something I'd never seen before: fear. He was afraid of me, afraid of what I was capable of, afraid of what else I might do. But I was done with David. I had achieved everything I set out to do. I had exposed his betrayal, destroyed his career, ruined his reputation, and taken control of our shared assets. He would spend years recovering from what I had done to him, if he ever recovered at all. Some people might call what I did excessive. They might say that I went too far, that my revenge was disproportionate to David's crime. But I disagree. David didn't just have an affair. He spent months lying to me, deceiving me, and humiliating me. He stole from our marriage, not just money, but time, energy, and trust. He made me question my own worth, my own judgment, my own reality. And when I discovered his betrayal, instead of coming clean and asking for forgiveness, he tried to cover it up. He continued lying even after I confronted him with evidence. He maintained contact with his affair partner while pretending to work on our marriage. David showed me no mercy, no respect, and no honesty. So I showed him none in return. The most satisfying part of my revenge wasn't the money I recovered or the career I destroyed. It was the knowledge that David finally understood who he had been dealing with. He had underestimated me, dismissed me, and betrayed me. Now he knew better. I am Victoria Sterling, and I don't forgive. I don't forget. And I never lose. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was promoted again, this time to Vice President of Marketing. I bought a penthouse apartment downtown and began dating a successful entrepreneur who treats me with the respect I deserve. David, from what I hear, is working as a freelance web developer, taking whatever projects he can find. He's still single, still struggling financially, and still trying to rebuild his reputation. Amanda left the city entirely. I heard she moved to another state and is working in customer service for a small company. She's also still single and, according to my sources, hasn't dated anyone since our affair was exposed. As for me, I've never been happier. I wake up every morning in my beautiful apartment, go to my successful career, and live my life exactly as I choose. I have no regrets about what I did to David and Amanda. They made their choices, and they faced the consequences. The only thing I regret is not recognizing David's true character sooner. I wasted 8 years of my life with a man who didn't deserve me. But I learned from that mistake, and I'll never make it again. To anyone who might be going through a similar situation, let me offer this advice: don't get mad, get even. But be smart about it. Plan carefully, execute flawlessly, and never let your emotions override your strategy. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and I served it at absolute zero. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Because sometimes, the only way to get justice is to take it into your own hands. And trust me, I have very capable hands. This is Victoria Sterling, reminding you that some people learn the hard way that actions have consequences. Make sure you're not one of them.